Back with hot stocks and a space which is the hottest right now. We're not doing too well, but yes, has been in news for the last few days, and the movement hasn't been great. Is banking. The largest bank, and a voice that is very important for the industry at large, Mr. Prateep Chaudhary of SBI, on the sidelines of the Motilal Oswal Investor Conference, joins us right now on the show. Good having you, Mr. Chaudhary. Thanks so much for taking the time out and joining us. Now, let's start off with an issue that you've been very vocal about. You've been calling for an aggressive cut in the CRR. Could you elaborate a bit more on that argument?
Yeah, because CRR currently is 4.75%, and we think that banks are not getting any interest on this, and this amounts to something like, I would say, about 3 lakh crores for the economy. So this is being held back and not put into the economy. So we think that it is not very supportive of the economy, employment, taxes. So, and we have seen whenever the CRR has been reduced, the banks have passed on the cuts in interest rate to the consumers. So lower interest rate means more productive economy.
Right, sir, but have you had any dialogue with the central bank regarding this? Because the RBI has clearly defended its stance of keeping the CRR where it is.
No, that's of course RBI's views, but from time to time they request our views, and at every forum we also make this point that a reduction in CRR would help in bringing down the rate of interest and would possibly be positive for a growth environment.
Which is well taken, Mr. Chaudhary. The question mark really is that this is something that the bankers want, but the RBI clearly has other thoughts, and to that effect, they came out with a strong statement yesterday regarding this issue as well. Your comments on where does this eventually lead to? Because I'm sure you have your wishes and RBI has its own thought process. Where does this eventually settle up?
So my purpose was to start a debate, and in fact I want a larger discussion that why CRR on banks alone. Because if the idea is to sterilize the money supply, please apply CRR to other participants in the financial sector like insurance, debt mutual funds and NBFCs also. So that was the discussion my objective was to initiate. I am not saying that from tomorrow. Even in my speech I said I don't expect CRR to go away tomorrow, but it is to start a discussion, and that is how all the decision making processes happen. For example, if you look at the loan recovery process, the banks have been pleading helplessness. After intensive discussions and other comments came the Securitization Act. So that is how the policy making in the public domain happens.
Right. Also, the central bank wants banks to maintain parity between deposit rates offered to retail and corporate clients. Mr. Chaudhary, do you think that this is a viable option for a bank of your size?
Yes, we have maintained that. We are maintaining, there is no distinction between retail and corporate, but for large value deposits, which RBI itself accepts as 15 lakhs, we offer about 0.5% more in some segments. But you know, in this issue of providing higher interest rate to high value account has been accepted by Reserve Bank itself. In fact, they came up with the prescription that for saving bank account with balances of more than ₹1 lakh, banks can give a better rate of interest. Now, is that not an admission that the firms, individual companies with higher balance possibly merit a higher rate of interest?
Mr. Chaudhary, and correct me if I'm wrong, and you have probably a better understanding of this issue, but do you believe the RBI's thought process stems from the fact that inflation has been a very variant subject, and with crude prices doing what they are doing, they do not want to tinker with rates at all, albeit not just the key policy rates, but even the RBI, even the CRR does not want to do too much of tinkering with any of these rates, and that is probably warranted in a situation wherein inflation is not showing, or in fact showing stubborn signs of staying high, and crude behaving in a very erratic fashion. Is that an argument at all?
So I don't want to join issue with RBI on this, because RBI has got very detailed and very informed understanding of the situation. So the final decision which the RBI takes, I'm sure in the best interest of the country and all concerned. But our take on inflation is a little different. We think that the pressure or the reason for inflation in India is also to a large extent coming from the supply side, because of supply constraint. Because the levels of consumption of India, whatever you look at, cement, milk, food, clothing, are so low compared internationally that we are not having enough supplies. And our recommendation is that to augment the supply, you need to augment production capacity, you need to augment investment, which would be facilitated by a lower rate of interest.
Fair enough. Mr. Chaudhary, the other aspect is, what kind of benefits do you think banks will get by giving higher rates of deposits to corporates? Some banks, including SBI, have aggressively shed bulk deposits of late. What is the strategy going forward?
See, nobody likes to pay higher rates, whether to corporates or to government, by choice. It is mostly a compulsion of the bank treasury. When the banks are close to a default situation in CRR, they go about looking for deposit at high cost. But for our bank, for SBI, the bulk deposit percentage is as low as 5%. We have not taken a single bulk deposit in the last 3 months, and this 5% is also because of legacy issues, and as these deposits run their full course and come to maturity, at present we have no inclination to renew these. So this question, possibly in SBI context, is not very material.
Okay, let's talk about some other issues pertaining to the banking space before we also come to the current situation in the Parliament, Mr. Chaudhary. But how soon do you think the banking bill would be passed, and what's the view of the same? Also, the proposed increase in voting rights to 26% in private banks from the current 10%. What are your views on the same?
These are legislative matters, these are to government to decide, so I would not like to comment on that. It is the collective wisdom of the lawmakers which will decide the outcome of this bill. So as a banking professional, I do not think I have a locus standi to comment on the banking bill itself.
But are you in favor of banking licenses being issued to corporate houses? And if so, when? I mean, when do you think a proposed timeline to this could get finalized?
I have no thoughts on this.
Right.
And I will not have any comments on that.
Fair enough. Just discussing a bit more about the kind of increase that you've seen in your home as well as auto loan portfolios since you took the market by storm by cutting rates. What are your targets in both these segments?
More the better. We have 50,000 crore of excess SLR sitting there. So, but let me tell you that the offtake in car loan happens much quicker. The offtake in home loans take a little longer because home loans are drawn in phases. But just to give you some number, that supposing we do 1,000 new loans per day, and each average loan is about 3 lakh rupees. So it is about 30 crores per day, or something like 1,000 crores per month. So even at that rate, I think it will take quite a lot of time to, this entire 50,000 crores to be consumed. Because the retail sector has that much ability to absorb credit.
You think going forward, the focus will also be on boosting deposit growth because that element has been lagging for the industry. Is there a specific strategy to draw more deposits?
Deposit growth, we are looking at the cost of deposit. So we have currently savings bank at 40%, but we are not paying outrageously high deposit rate to get deposit. At the current deposit rate, which are in keeping with the market, we are having a steady inflow of deposit. So slack deposit growth at this point for SBI is not a concern. For the banking industry, it is difficult to generalize because the position of each individual bank is different.
Mr. Chaudhary, last couple of questions really. To your mind, you did mention that a few issues that were brought up were not a concern. What, to your mind, is the biggest concern for SBI? Because as you said, for the banking, it's very different. For some banks, power remains the biggest headache. For some smaller banks, there could be irrigation or agri loans, which may be a big concern. For SBI, what is the biggest concern over the next 2 quarters? I'm not asking for the next 1 year.
Next 2 quarters is the slackness in demand for long-term loans. So that is where we think the volume growth comes from, and that is what acts as a big momentum for the overall increase in business of the bank. So that remains one of the concerns. And the other concerns are, high sometime, low sometime, but NPA, stress, these are all, part of the life of a banker. But I am very happy to say that there is a silver lining. The rains have revived in the last 15 days. And in many parts of India, which was suffering from shortage of water, that shortage has been mitigated to a large extent.
Right, Mr. Chaudhary, before we let you go, sir, just one final, comment on 2 aspects essentially. I'm trying to tie in 2 questions here. But, your reaction really, the finance minister has asked bankers to put pressure on realty companies to cut prices and sell inventories. At an industry level, how do you view the health of realty companies and loans to the developer segment? And that just addresses or brings me to the larger issue, which is overall asset quality and restructured assets.
So I think we should see I was present in the meeting when the finance minister made the comment. So in the meeting there was a mention that much of the realty and housing prices have gone beyond the reach of the middle classes or even of the upper middle classes. So I think his point came from the fact that what could be the way to bring down the prices of real estate or particularly individual housing to more realistic levels. So that is the context in which these comments were made. But they, I think, are well-meaning and would help the country if that were to happen.
All right, Mr. Chaudhary, really appreciate you taking the time out and joining us for this quick interaction. Thanks so much for joining in today.